Girl, I don't know, because I love coffee. Well, okay, no, now that I'm saying it out loud, I actually kind of hear it. Good morning, guys. Thank you for coming back. Today is Soulful Sunday again, another time for us to sit down, rest, reflect, and connect over some bite-sized lessons that I feel that God has put on my heart to learn personally, and now for me to share with you all. I really appreciate you guys stopping in. So this week, the topic is going to be shifts happen, right? And I am currently at, I would say, the precipice of the biggest shift I've experienced to date, and it has brought up a lot of emotions, and I feel like I really needed to reevaluate a lot of things during this transition. But it's not different, I would say, from any other shifts that I've had in the past, right? So then I guess the question becomes, like, what is a shift, right? How do I know I'm experiencing a shift? A shift is essentially just a change that you experience, right? But the difference, and I think the key difference, is the outcome, right? It's sort of, well, it's two things actually. It is the material that goes into the shift and the outcome that you get from the shift. I feel like in my experience, when I've had a shift in my life, it has quite literally changed the entire fabric of my life. It's like walking on a path, going a certain direction, and then completely changing your trajectory. So some examples of that would be when I became a parent, when I moved to Georgia, when I moved back from Georgia to New York, when I started working in one industry and then change industries. Like my day-to-day, although like the little things stayed the same, the material was different. So when I was living in New York and moved to Georgia, the environment was different. Like I had to learn everything pretty much from scratch, and then I became a parent. And so the person that I knew as Jordan was no longer there with me. I was somebody completely different because I was now a parent, and I had to kind of figure out myself in that way and what kind of parent I wanted to become, right? So that is what I would constitute as a shift. It's big, and it kind of defines your life, either for a season or possibly for the rest of your life. So me becoming a parent started to define my life differently, as opposed to who I was before being a parent, right? But like those are some examples that I have experienced shifts, right, in my life. And I think though the main consistent factor in every shift that I experienced is that I could tell. It was like the wind would change, and I knew that something was going to shift. And previously I used to fight these shifts. I mentioned that before in another video, but now, because I know that it's not to harm me, it's ultimately for my growth and for my benefit, I lean into the shifts. And you would think that'd make it a lot easier. It was not easy this time around. I mean, I'm assuming that the transition that I'm getting ready to experience is a really, really big one, because the level of purging and the level of, how would I describe it? Just the level of awareness I had about this shift. It's like I could see, like I was watching myself from outside of my body experience this change preemptively, and we still haven't even gotten to the meat and potatoes of the change, right? So I'm doing this video to give people a list of 5 things that I've noticed consistently with every major shift that I've had in my life, that they could look out for, that could cue them into the fact that they're probably also going to experience a shift. And obviously everyone's life is different, but even with talking with friends and family members about major shifts and change they've had in their lives, it's been quite similar. Like they're like, yeah, no, I know that's definitely something that I've experienced. Okay, so let's get started. First sign that you are about to experience a shift: old things stop working. And sometimes it's small, like a small thing that you don't really think about just stops working all of a sudden. but sometimes it's like huge, major, and it really like, you're like, whoa, if this is not gonna work anymore, then like, where do I turn? What should I expect going forward? For me, there was a job that I was working, like this was a few years ago. This is actually right before COVID. So funny enough, I didn't know COVID was coming. I'm not even gonna begin to say I knew COVID. I could feel it was coming. It was just specifically with that job where it was already kind of, I guess, a rocky job for me, and I was very just confused on how to like operate at that job, because it didn't seem that anything that I did really worked. It was like always kind of like I was odd man out, and I'm like, why am I here? But then it started to kind of ramp up to the point that I'm like, I know I'm not supposed to be here anymore, or for much longer, right? And then it came a day that like I remember it so clearly. God had actually told me to hold on at this job. He says, just, I need you to stay just a little bit longer. I need you to stay just a little bit longer, and you're gonna see why. And so I did, but there came a day, I remember I was getting up to go run, like I usually did at a time, at 4 a.m. And the running for me was like my release, but I didn't even have the energy to go for the run. So I'm sitting in the living room of my mom's house, and like it's complete darkness. And I said, God, I ain't got it. I know you told me to hold on, but I do not have whatever it is. I'm gonna go in today, but I don't have it. And lo and behold, COVID happened, so I was let go, which really worked out in my favor. I know that sounds crazy, but it did, and it then changed my trajectory. I decided I was no longer gonna be a paralegal working like in that capacity, and I was gonna utilize my degree. So there was the shift, like it was right there. I think another example, this is more recent, but it definitely came to mind when I was like making this list. My first car that I purchased for myself, it was an Infiniti G30, oh no, I'm gonna forget. Is it G37? I think it was G37X, right? And I loved my girl bad. I paid for her all by myself, insurance, like, you know, fully paid her off. That was my girl. But she was an older car. I bought her used, and I knew that I wasn't gonna take her with me to California. Like it just didn't make any sense, because she was like, like, you know, every time you turn around, it's like, oh, there's a leak. Oh, this is not working. Oh, the tires. And I was like, no, girl, you gotta hold on. And so she was holding on really, really strong, but it had gotten to a point that I couldn't get my car down the street that I live on. I live on a major street, and like where I was going, it was only like a 2-mile difference, and I already knew that my car was like having a hard time getting there. And so I said to God, God, I don't know what to do about this car. Like, people keep telling me that I could sell it, because it was like a car where people like to like, you know, use the parts or like to soup it up, so somebody would have probably taken it. And but I didn't, it was a big process, and I didn't know how to do it. I was like, God, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. And as I'm driving, I'm thinking that thought, boom, car accident. Now obviously shifts can be smooth, like the first one like I mentioned, but other times they can be very like quick. But I knew leading up to that point that it wasn't going to be much longer with that car. So that is like one way I know that a shift is going to happen, right? Number 2, emotions. My emotions, at least for me, everybody else is different in how their emotions are. My emotions are very heightened when I know that I'm going to experience a shift. It's like this bubbling up of not anxiety per se, but a knowing, a feeling that something is going to happen. And all of a sudden I'm crying about everything. I'm grieving, like my physical, mental, and emotional being is grieving what it probably knows is getting ready to end, which is the season, right? This last season, which I'm still in it, it's not even this last season, I'm still in the thick of this season, but there was a point where I guess it was just kind of revving up. And another reason why I believe whatever this transition is going to be for me in this next space, I have an idea of what it is, I don't fully know, but I know it's going to be big, because I have not felt like that, like emotionally, in a long time. I mean, it was just a faucet that someone turned on, and I was crying about everything. I was like revisiting old memories, like saying goodbye to places. Every time I would go somewhere that I used to go a lot, I'm like, oh my God, I used to come here with my daughter, or like, oh my God, we used to come here all the time. I'm like crying in the street. I was like, oh, this is ridiculous. But I knew, like, you know, that something was happening, something was changing, and my soul was grieving, right? And so maybe with someone else, it might be anger, like, or frustration, or those are the main emotions that I know. That usually cues me in that something is about to give or it's about to change. So yeah. Number 3, time feels very weird. Now, this one I've felt more recently. And I can recall in times in the past when I've experienced a major shift of feeling that time felt weird, but not in the way that it does now. Like now it feels so unbelievably unreal. I can't even understand why it feels so unreal. Well, I can. And so not only am I experiencing an individual shift, we all can see that the world is experiencing a very major shift that is affecting our social, political, and economic systems, and they're quite literally being turned on their head. So everything that we thought we knew or everything that was standard has just been kind of shifted to something completely different. And I think, and I've heard this from other people who are also experiencing this like weirdness with time, that is why, like, you know, because we are all going to experience a shift. Number 4, and I'm putting this on here, and I don't know that everybody will relate to this, but I know a lot of people who I've asked and spoken to about experiencing shifts in their life. They have said that, yeah, this is like pretty standard stuff. There comes a time where isolation is required, right? Like all of a sudden, like you just don't have the energy to kind of like, you know, be with friends or like with family, and like you kind of come into yourself. And it's not because of the emotions you're feeling. You're just like, I know that I need to kind of turn all my energy inward, right? Why I say this one with a little bit of a caveat, I love spending time by myself. I'm like the queen of it. Like I love my company. So it's not necessarily a major shift, but even in my normal level of solitude, there's a bit more for me where I may not answer the phone when a friend calls, or like I might like, you know, just text back or something, because I know that God wants me to go inward and like really connect with me and what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking, and not let my judgment be clouded by what's going on around me or with other people, right? And then another, I guess, like tangential part to that idea, I use those moments and those like periods of isolation, or like, you know, when I step back to really get into my fasting, really get into my meditating, really get into my my prayer. I pray all the time, but it's like I'm asking questions that normally would fly over my own head, or like I'm having thoughts that wouldn't normally land. And I know from experience that when I fast and I'm asking these questions, the clarity is really, really there. My intuition is super heightened, and I vary in the type of fast that I do. Sometimes I'll do like a Daniel fast, or maybe I'm fasting from social media, which again is not a huge thing for me. Like me getting on social media is a bigger thing. Like, you know, I'm not really one for the social media, the social medias. Anyway, but I'll do like a Daniel fast, or I'll fast from social media, or I'll fast from like maybe something that I'm currently enjoying, or something that I feel is taking up too much of my mental capacity. Right now, I am unwillingly fasting coffee. God just random one day, the end of the year, he's like, yeah, so the coffee clip. Actually, not only am I fasting coffee, I'm fasting unwillingly my ADHD medication, because it is back ordered. So basically anything that kind of gets my mind, like, I guess like hyper focused, it's just, God's like, no, you actually won't be doing that today or for a while. And you would think, why coffee? Girl, I don't know, because I love coffee. Well, okay, no, now that I'm saying it out loud, I actually kind of hear it. I love coffee so much. Oh my God, I love it so much. So like, hold on. So I guess it makes sense as to why God would want me to fast from coffee. That then brings me to another sign that you are probably going to or are already experiencing a shift. So that brings me to not the next sign, but something that I think is like related to what I was saying about fasting from coffee for me currently. You'll start noticing little changes with you as far as like, like with food and taste and like just things you used to consume. So for me, I stopped eating meat 17 years ago because I just all of a sudden couldn't stomach it. It was just not working. It wasn't agreeing with me. And I just like, it got to the point where it was causing such a problem that I'm like, it's like, am I gonna suffer through eating meat if it's really giving me this big of an issue? No, I'm going to stop eating meat. And people always ask me, oh, how did you manage to do that? It was making me sick, so I had to stop eating it, right? I'm trying to think, drinking wine, and like just alcohol in general. And I know that's more of an age related thing because like as you get older, you just, your body changes and your taste changes. But I don't really care for it. I'll drink a glass of wine if I'm out with friends, but like I don't have a taste for it at all, which is wild. It is wild to me. Anyone who knows me, that is like extremely wild. And then let me think of another one. The coffee, I'm kind of like, I'm taking a break, yes, but I kind of feel like watch me never want to go back, or like drink it so sparingly to the point that I never drink it again. And that is devastating to me. That is probably worse than anything I've experienced in this season because I love coffee. Anyway, okay. So then the last one, which I was debating if I was going to make this the last one because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to explain it properly, but I think it does still go in line with what I was saying about the isolation and then the fasting and then the clarity that you get from the isolation and the fasting. There is a quiet knowing. It's just one day. It's like the wind blows and you're like, yeah, this is over. This is done. Whatever this was is done, and I'm moving into something else, and I can just feel it. And it's not a strong example, but I still think it's worth mentioning that once you start experiencing the other four, don't discredit that quiet knowing, because now you've kind of cleared all the things that would have been distractions, and it's nothing but just clarity. So if you know, right? You're not losing it. Just go with it. Don't fight against it. Yeah. And I hope that, whatever shift or change or transition that you are going through in this season, that this video that I did helped you just a little bit, and that you feel empowered to keep moving through this. You are not falling behind. You are not messing up. You are not lost. You are doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And I believe in you if no one has told you that today. All right, guys. So that's it. That's all I got for today. Thank you for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe. I am steadily putting more videos on this page. I'm very, very happy. I'm getting into a groove of it. I'm very, very thankful. And I will see you guys next week. All right. Bye.